with all the evidence that we've amassed in our preparations for the Stockholm Conference, including the views of many of the world's leading scientists, I am convinced that the prophets of doom have got to be taken seriously. In other words, doomsday is a possibility. I'm equally convinced that doomsday is not inevitable.
Why do you think they have to be taken seriously?
Well, they have to be taken seriously because it has become apparent that today man's own activities have reached the scale where they are the principal determinants of his own future. For example, we are now today effecting more changes in the composition of the atmosphere, in the composition of the waters of the world, in even the composition of certain elements in our food chain. We're making more of these changes in one generation than have been made in millions of years of human evolution. We don't know exactly what will be the ultimate impact of these changes, but we do know that many of them are irreversible and many of them could be decisive in their effects on man's future. This question is not a matter of one man or one group of people's predictions. It's a matter of the fact that an increasing number of very serious-minded scientists have produced evidence from a whole series of events, many of them the well-known pollution or environmental problems that have come to our attention, that the natural world in which man lives and on which he depends is indeed deteriorating, is being destroyed in many instances at a rate that is accelerating and that can only continue to accelerate unless we begin to control the activities that are having this destructive impact. Now, whether we are pessimistic or optimistic depends really on what we think about the nature of man. Whether we really believe that man, in light of this evidence, is going to be wise enough and enlightened enough to subject himself to this kind of discipline and control.
The film Zero Population Growth predicts a society in the next century where there is overpopulation, where there is extreme pollution, and where people can no longer be allowed to have babies. Now, is this the shape of things to come?
Well, I haven't seen the film, but I can say that if we continue on our present trends, on our present course, it's very likely that in many parts of the world this will be the case. In fact, we have begun to see it in many areas. Now, licenses to have babies, something that I got in trouble for some years ago for suggesting, even in Canada, that this might be necessary at some point, or at least some restriction on the right to have a child. I'm not proposing this. I was simply predicting this as one of the possible courses that society would have to seriously consider should we get ourselves into this kind of situation. But I think the promising thing in this is that it isn't necessary to get ourselves into this situation.
How do we avoid it?
We can avoid it, I think, first of all, by doing what we're now doing, and that is discussing it, understanding that the problem does exist, that the possibility does exist, and in the actions which I believe still are open to us if we take those actions in time. I'm persuaded that the future of man is going to be decided very much by the decisions taken in this generation. And we have to realize it took mankind something like 50 millennia to achieve its first billion of population on this earth. Now it takes us some 20 years to add 1 billion people. Now, this has got to be regarded as a serious problem.
Dr. Strong, there is a cynical view that any United Nations conference must be a talking shop at which a lot is said and very little is done. How do you answer that?
Well, I can only say that I understand that cynicism. It was one of the things that I had to consider when I took on this responsibility. But it is true. Rhetoric and very little follow-up. And right from the beginning, however, we have been determined, because of the fact that action in this field is absolutely indispensable to man's future, that governments at Stockholm would be given the maximum opportunity to take decisions which will lead to action. Now, equally, however, I believe that the nations of the world themselves are impressed with the evidence that we have amassed that suggests that we must adopt a much more cooperative attitude towards our dealing with this problem, that Stockholm must usher in a new era of international cooperation. And I believe that this will be the dominant motivation. I have to hope that. Governments have had a long time to prepare themselves. They've been deeply involved in the preparations. They have before them a series of concrete proposals, which they have had now in their hands for about 3 months. Certainly ample time to consider them. There is no basis for avoiding these decisions at Stockholm. And I believe with that the governments will go to Stockholm with an overriding sense of the importance of achieving consensus on at least a large percentage of these proposals.